Assimilation is a process where people change their cultural opinion based on someone else's cultural opinion. It is the most extreme form of acculturation. The information and beliefs of a dominant culture are taken by an assimilating group that completely loses its own culture in order to adapt into a new one.
Assimilation is a process in which a person, culture, group adapts themselves or adopts practices of another. There exists forced and unforced assimilation. In the forced assimilation, individuals or groups are forced to adopt their practices of another, such as the language, religion, or festivities, because of colonization or the control of a dominant group. Unforced assimilation is made by the willfulness of groups because of several factors such as immigration. Assimilation can be good or bad.
Assimilation means to integrate or incorporate people into the society or the environment that you belong to. This could be also defined as adapting to other cultures, traditions, customs, language, attitudes, and other aspects of their culture. By assimilation, two cultures get together and a new culture can be formed.
So, in conclusion, this word describes a process of adaptation and incorporation into a bigger society or adapting to their traditions, customs, and culture. The Incas' process of colonization in Ecuador was achieved by violent methods, in which they would destroy cities and rebuild them with their culture, language, and religion.
Assimilation is also present in immigrants in the USA. They have to adapt themselves to the traditions and culture of this country, and they can end up losing their own identity in order to assimilate completely into a new and sometimes hostile society.
There were a lot of Jewish women moving to USA to live during the 20th century. Some of them adapted easily to their culture and daily way of life, and others required a little bit more effort to adapt to it. The majority of these women adapted to the language and to the traditions. For noticing this, we can look at some aspects as the way they speak, eat, vote, dress, make religious practices, where they live, and whom they marry. Their adoption was such impressive that sometimes the only thing that differentiates a Jew from an American in the United States is their ID cards.
The Stolen Generation was a period in which indigenous Australian children were taken from their families as a way to kill the indigenous culture in Australia and assimilate them to the white community culture. They were forced to forget their heritage and past customs in order to achieve their assimilation to white culture. The children suffered from mistreatment and forced labor. They were educated to be miners and workers.
For this reason, we can say that assimilation occurred in different eras, places, and periods. It is the most extreme form of acculturation, and it involves taking information and beliefs of a dominant culture and losing one's own culture. I believe that the salad bowl theory is probably the best way of cultural association. It involves people from different cultures living in harmony, like all the ingredients that conform a salad. It is the integration of cultures with multiple immigrants. The combination of these cultures help these immigrants retain their beliefs and keeps them together.
Well, but I consider that a melting pot theory is the best way to form a diverse culture because it takes ideas, tradition, and mostly good things from other cultures and forms one big and it promotes national unity. Of course, there will always be disharmony, but it's essential for a country to have unity and nationalism for them to progress.
In the other side, I think that the theory of the salad bowl is better than the theory of the melting pot, because this theory describes assimilation as the integration of people to a society, and they don't change their culture for the American culture. Instead, they maintain their own identity while belonging to a larger culture. It proposes that society should be composed by individual and unique identities that altogether form a mixed culture, and I agree with this perspective.
Jews who live in Germany compared to those who live in other European countries before the Shoa didn't have many differences. Jews in Germany, as in other European countries, enjoy the same rights, but not the same treatment. Jews in Germany had more opportunity to go ahead. They would develop also more institutions and religion centers. Meanwhile, in other European countries, they will exclude themselves.
I also think that the freedoms and rights of the Jews in Germany were similar to the ones of the Jews in other European countries. Some differences were that the Jews that lived in Germany lived mainly in shtetls, that are small neighborhoods. They also prayed 3 times a day, keep kosher, and celebrate Jewish holidays. While the Jews in the rest of Europe talk Yiddish, a traditional Jewish language, and use traditional clothing.
Actually, in Western Europe, especially in Germany, Jews participated in all aspects of life and had great success academically and in arts and sciences. Here, they dressed and talked like countrymen, and traditional religious practices and Yiddish culture were less important for them. They had more education than the Eastern European Jews, and they lived in towns or cities. In Eastern Europe, Jews were less assimilated, and their lives were lived in different ways. Many of them were writers, political activists, or musicians. And they lived separately in shtetls, and they spoke their own language, Yiddish.
Jewish people living in the city had a complete different lifestyle than those living in the countryside because of the treatment and conditions each one had. Jews who live in the cities would be better educated and would be wealthier. They would learn and speak the country's language and dress as non-Jews. They weren't very different than non-Jews, so they were treated equally. Jews in cities didn't consider themselves very Jewish. Meanwhile, Jews living in the countryside would separate themselves from non-Jews and live in little villages for them called shtetls. The segregation was stronger and the Jewish population was poorer.
During Hitler's rise to power, life in the countryside was dangerous for Jews. It was harder for them to hide there. They were attacked and discriminated not only by soldiers, but by their Catholic compatriots too. In big cities, it was easier for them to hide from the soldiers. In some parts, they were less discriminated, and the people were more likely to accept them and their assimilation into a non-Jewish society.
After the Shoa, Jews living in the city had a very different lifestyle compared to Jews living in the countryside. First, there has been a process of urbanization between the Jews in Europe. This process consisted in the immigration of Jews who lived in villages and worked in agriculture to the city, where they worked in big industries. The Jews that lived in the countryside worked mainly in agriculture or worked in stores and sold tools, agricultural products, clothes, and household utensils. In the other side, the Jews from the city, specifically from New York City, were more borderland Jews, which means they have a tie with the Jewish culture, but they are not religious. Also, most of them had high incomes and have a good education.
In the countryside, they were easily discriminated because of their traditions and beliefs. In the cities, they were less discriminated because of their process of assimilation into a non-Jewish society. They were accepted by their German compatriots and were more likely to have been included into public events and organizations without discrimination towards them.
I totally agree with you. They were treated differently because of their level of education or how much they would practice their culture. Jews in cities would normally dress, speak, and relation with non-Jews. This would lead them to an equal and more respected treatment, but those who live in the countryside would prefer to exclude themselves from another to practice more often their culture.
That is correct. The Jews that live in the countryside are discriminated and are not accepted nor included in society because of their religion. They are also exploited and persecuted. On the other hand, city Jews were accepted in society, the religion was tolerated and included in communities. They have a better lifestyle because they participate in many organizations, are accepted in all types of works, and have a good education and profession.
I agree completely because the treatment towards another depends on the social background and in the setting you are. Our way of thinking depends on how tolerant is our era or in where are we, because many times we can coexist in a conservative and non-tolerant century or in a contemporary place in which educational rates are high.
I also agree with the statement of inquiry because I think that we have to learn that diversity is important. This depends mainly in the place in which these people live and the area it is, because there are countries in which immigrants or people from different cultures are accepted and included in society, but in other countries there is discrimination against them. The time period also matters because in the past there was way more discrimination, segregation, and marginalization, but now the world is reflecting and realizing that diversity is better. People are afraid of being different and someone could change anything in order to fit in society. So I think we don't have to discriminate or mistreat someone because of his identity.
I agree with this statement because I think that the way people treat each other depends on where and in what time period they are. If someone is in a country where there are laws against a group of people, they are probably not going to want to be involved with them. They are influenced by the beliefs of the place they are in. As for the era, this can make a significant change in the way people treat each other and how their identity is shaped, for beliefs change over time. In one moment they can support some people, but later they can be against them. I think that they may not be treated equally. We live in a society that makes judgment and legislation in practically every aspect of our lives. If someone doesn't share everyone else's beliefs, they are likely to treat them differently and even disrespectfully. Of course, in some places there may be a culture of tolerance and acceptance towards people with different thoughts, but unfortunately it has not been spread and used all around the world. In many places, we have to think like the others to be respected, or even just to avoid discrimination.
Well, not all members can be equally treated if they don't share the same identity. Many times it is not because of discriminatory terms, but because of the lack of understanding. The human's behavior towards new or different things is understandable, but is not justified if this is repetitive. In conclusion, nowadays not all members of society can be treated equally, but we can do it. It is very difficult to treat all members of the society equally because we have all differences physically and ideologically.
I think that in the world we live in, members of society are not treated completely equally if they don't share the same identity because of all the stereotypes, conditions, and ideologies that are present now in our society. I think that it is better to be as the others while it is not. Currently, we treat someone different because he is different from us, but what is wrong about that? Being different is fantastic. It means being unique. I think that in a perfect world, we should be treated completely equally, despite our different identities, because if we are all humans, we deserve the same rights, obligations, and duties.
Do you agree with assimilation? Well, I partially agree with assimilation because you can assimilate good and bad things. Assimilation is an opportunity to be more tolerant towards others and to learn more about the rest of cultures, but forced assimilation can kill cultures and their heritage. Assimilation should only be used in good and enforced terms.
Well, I completely agree with assimilation, and I think that is an excellent process of adaptation, but it could be better if when adapting and including into a new culture, we don't lose our own identity. And the world could be recognized as a mixed and diverse culture that is composed by many groups that keep their own collective identity as a salad bowl.
I also agree with assimilation because I believe that with this process, people are more likely to adapt in a strange environment easily. They can find a way to be accepted and to have a positive interaction with new people. Even if this may not be easy for them to adapt into a different environment, it can help them to be included in a new place where they can be free and happy.
After this discussion, I have learned a lot of things about assimilation in Ecuador and other process of assimilation about the Jewish, Greeks, and Incas. I opened my mind to new and different perspectives with the positive and negative aspects of assimilation. I know that some people think that a melting pot is better, and for others, the salad bowl is better. Especially, Stephen's perspective about the melting pot theory influenced me a lot because I recognized it really is a good theory that could eliminate discrimination in the world because of the unity. So my opinion changed a little bit in this aspect. But I can say that at the end, I amplified my knowledge and learned about a lot of things that I have never thought about before.
The opinion of others made me seek to understand different points of views, and I could educate myself more. I realized that my opinion might be wrong and others' opinions might be right, and this makes me more tolerant. Now I am more open-minded and I am willing to listen more.
Thanks to this conversation, I was able to see that there are more and different ways to see all of these things. For example, in the melting pot and salad bowl theory, I was able to see that both of them have positive and negative things. Throughout this conversation, I learned different things about Jews, their daily lives, and their rights. With the information me and my friends gathered, we were able to understand and recognize their story and the importance of people's rights today. The different facts presented opened up my mind and raised awareness into the importance of our freedom.